Chapter 16. Colin and the Lamb. The next morning, Mary ran to meet Dickon in the garden. When she first saw him, she couldn't help but giggle. Dickon had a squirrel peeking out from each of his pockets. Dickon grinned and introduced Mary to the squirrels. "This is Nut and this is Shell," he said. Mary giggled even harder when Nut and Shell leaped onto his shoulders at the sound of their names. Dickon settled down under his favorite tree and took out his wooden pipe. "Colin wants to meet you," Mary told him, "and Nut and Shell too, of course." When Mary returned to the manor for lunch, she visited Colin before going to eat. She sat next to his bed and told him about Dickon and Nut and Shell. Colin laughed so hard that tears came to his eyes. Mary could see he was feeling much better. "Oh, I wish I could see them," Colin cried, still laughing. Mary raised her eyebrows. "Well, I'm glad you said that, Colin," she announced, "because I have a big surprise for you." Colin straightened up in bed and looked Mary in the eye. "What?" he asked eagerly. "What?" Mary was so anxious she got up from her chair and sat next to him on his bed. "Can I trust you?" she asked in a whisper. "Can I trust you for sure?" "Yes," Colin whispered back. "Yes." "Dickon is coming to see you later today, and he's bringing his creatures with him," she announced. Colin cried out in delight. "That's not all," Mary added. "The rest is better. There is a door into the garden. I found it. It was under the ivy on the wall, and I found a key, too. It was buried near the door." If Colin had been a strong, healthy boy, he probably would have jumped up and shouted with glee. But since he was weak, all he could manage was a soft, "Hooray!" "Oh, Mary," he sighed. "Can I see the secret garden? Will I live to see it?" Mary rolled her eyes. "Don't be silly, Colin," she said. "Of course you will." The way she said it so naturally brought Colin to his senses. Soon, he was laughing at himself for being so silly. Mary and Colin ate lunch together in Colin's room. When they finished, Dr. Craven came to examine Colin. "I thought you did not like fresh air," Dr. Craven said when Colin announced his plans to go outside with Mary. "My cousin will take care of me," Colin told him. "She will go with me." "And the nurse?" Dr. Craven asked. Colin shook his head fiercely. "No, I don't want the nurse with me. Mary knows a boy who can push my carriage." "It's Dickon," Mary chimed in. Dr. Craven nodded. "If it is Dickon, then you will be okay. He's a strong, capable boy, that Dickon." Downstairs, Mrs. Medlock walked Dr. Craven to the door. "Can you believe it?" she asked. "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes," Dr. Craven said, shaking his head, "I never would have." Back in Colin's room, Mary threw open the bedroom windows. "It's so beautiful," she cried, taking in a deep breath. "The spring is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. That's fresh air, Colin. Breathe it in." Colin lay in bed with his eyes closed, taking deep breaths. Mary had never seen him looking so relaxed. Suddenly, Mary let out a small cry. Colin opened his eyes instantly. "What is it?" he asked. "Did you hear that caw?" Mary asked him. Colin listened. Seconds later, there was another caw. "Yes," he replied, "I heard it." "That's Soot," Mary told him, and listened more carefully. "Do you hear a tiny bleat?" "Oh, yes," Colin cried. "That's Dickon's newborn lamb. He found it on the moor yesterday, all sick and dying. He nursed it back to health." Moments later, they heard Dickon and his animal friends coming down the corridor to Colin's room. "If you please, sir," Martha said, opening Colin's door all the way, "here is Dickon and his creatures." Dickon came in smiling his nicest, widest smile. He cradled the newborn lamb in his arms, and the little red fox trotted by his side. As usual, Nut was on his left shoulder and Shell on his right. Colin sat up slowly and stared in amazement at the parade, just as he had stared at Mary when he saw her for the first time. Dickon smiled at Colin, then walked up to him and put the lamb right on Colin's lap. The small creature immediately began to nuzzle his new caretaker. "What's he doing?" Colin whispered. "He's hungry," Dickon explained quietly, kneeling next to the lamb. Dickon took a bottle of milk from his pocket and offered it to the lamb. The lamb began to suck hungrily. Everyone was quiet as the lamb fed. Pretty soon the tiny creature fell asleep on Colin's lap. In a voice barely above a whisper, Dickon told Colin the story of how he found the lamb and nursed him back to health. As Dickon spoke, Soot flew around the room, sometimes flying out the open window, then back in again. Nut and Shell rested on the windowsill. Captain was curled up on the floor next to Dickon. The three friends visited for nearly 2 hours. They looked at picture books, at gardens and flowers, talking excitedly about their own garden. Colin and Mary exchanged quiet looks. They were overjoyed. That was obvious.